Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Advisor's Advantage with James Murphy and the lovely Jennifer Cunningham from RMS Title. Today we're talking to you about title insurance, what it is, why you need it, and some other fun facts that Jen's going to share. So, without further ado,
Thank
Jennifer.
you. Thank you, James Murphy. So nice to be here today. I appreciate it.
The pleasure is all of ours, truly. It really is.
Fantastic.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the heck this title insurance is, why we need to pay for it?
I think the simplistic way to look at title insurance is like any other insurance, you're insuring something. And in this instance, you're insuring the property that you're purchasing. And you're ensuring the fact that you are the sole owner of that property. So once you move in, no other person who has had any prior rights to that property can come knock on your door and say, you need to go.
Okay, so it kind of solidifies your ownership in a
Correct.
sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you were buying a house and had to get title insurance, is there anything that you should be looking out for as a buyer?
Usually your entrusted team that's working with you, whether it be your realtor, attorney, or the title company that you've hired to run title insurance or run the searches on your property, you can typically, I would say more often than not, rely on them because RMS is not the only title insurance company in New Jersey, and we're not the only really good title insurance company in New Jersey.
Just one of the best.
Just one of the best, yeah. I mean, but we all have the same common goal in mind, and that's to ensure the best interest of our clients. So if you look at it from that perspective, typically the attorney you're working with is going to hire somebody that they've worked with for many years. The realtor has some kind of partnership with somebody. So they're the ones that are ultimately going to, as your question was, if I heard you correctly, was they're the ones who are going to look out for what you need to be aware of. And more than likely, there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes that happen before you even get to the closing table that you're unaware of that may have been issues on title that got fixed.
Right. Okay, that's fantastic. When I speak with first-time home buyers and title insurance comes up, I will tell you the first thing that comes up is, why is it so expensive? And what I always start to get into is it's expensive because of all that's included within that cost. So tell us a little bit what goes into title and why does it get so pricey?
So I don't know that I would ever consider title insurance pricey because as you would look at what we talked about in the first question is it's the most important part of the transaction, right? Once you've picked your home, ensuring that no one else has the rights to your home. So I don't know that you can necessarily put a price tag on that, so to speak. As far as the rates are mandated by the state, right? So we can't charge anything more than what the state says we can charge for a specific title policy. And then just like anything else, premiums, I guess, the ebbs and flows to the costs of that certainly are with the amount of claims involved, right? I think that's sort of like an inherent thing when it comes to insurance. So if you're working with really good companies, you're not going to see a lot of those increases. I think in my years in title insurance, I think the premiums are pretty close to the same over 16 years than they've always been. So I guess the protocol that they have set forth to underwrite a file to make sure that it's insured properly is pretty good. With that being said, of course, there is nothing that's a perfect system, and certainly you're going to run into issues where there's claims made with every title insurance company.
How would a buyer handle that? What if there are claims?
Most likely, you have a policy, and then your policy shows you what you're covered for, and in that you would be able to go back to your attorney, and then your attorney is going to come back to the title company that they chose, or you'll go straight to the title insurer, and between yourself and the underwriting counsel for my company will work out how we're going to resolve the issue. And to answer that in a very short matter would be really challenging because there's a lid for every pot and each circumstance would be very different. Some things might be a very quick fix, where some things might be a little bit more complicated and have to be litigated.
Okay. Now, when I think insurance, the first thing I think is protection. Like a homeowner's insurance is
Absolutely.
going to protect that home from, catastrophe, disaster,
Correct.
whatever have you. Title insurance is basically doing the same thing. It's protecting the buyer
Correct.
as well as the lender, right?
Correct. Absolutely. A
Tell
lender
us more about the protection.
yeah. Um, the lender absolutely on any so interestingly enough, it's a really good point. Think about it this way, right? A lender requires that you get title insurance when you purchase a home. If you purchase a home in cash, it's not required that you get title insurance. So if you really thought about from a global perspective, the lender has a lot of vested interest in making sure that you're insured properly. So if they have that much of interest, shouldn't you if you were buying a home cash? And then as far as the protection is, let's say that an estate wasn't properly probated and that somebody from, a past heir came out of the woodwork and said, hey, I wasn't made known that this property was sold. They could certainly claim rights to the property. These are just some areas of protection. There's certainly human error, right? In the transferring and deeds and conveyances and just different things that are associated with the property, mortgages. There's human error. There's recording errors. And then there's certainly the negative, which is there's fraudulent issues, right?
Mhm.
So you can never, we all know that there's, not everyone in the world is as good as James Murphy and Jen Cunningham and people's, best interests at heart. But there are people who, have fraudulently drawn up documents and tried to gain ownership to a property. And so that could be something that could come up as far as, something you're covered under. So those are just a few of the things.
Have you heard of people stealing title? Because I recently heard commercials about protect your title insurance.
Yeah,
Somebody
so
could or title the
it's the second
property.
time I've been asked this question in a short period of time. It's not something I'm super familiar
We're
with.
all watching the same channels, apparently. That's
Yeah.
what it comes down to.
Yeah, so it's something I'd have to do a little bit more research on and call that our powers that be to find out a little bit more about it. So I wouldn't want to speak to it since it's not something I'm super comfortable with. And I always say I know what I know, and then I certainly don't know what I don't know. So I got to reach for an expert on that.
You gotta respect that. And I think it was something like a life lock, except it was not. It was for your title, so to protect that. So I
Yeah,
thought that was interesting.
very. I'd like to learn more about it.
Next time I see it, I'll send you the commercial. Tell us what questions do you find first time homebuyers have with title? Is there anything that you have been asked or agents or other people, other professionals have talked to you about regarding title insurance?
It's interesting. Probably because when you go to purchase homeowners insurance and health insurance, you have a lot of interaction with your agent,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an insurance that you just inherently are more educated on. I think title insurance, because it's not typically picked by the home buyer, and rather the attorney, realtor, perhaps the lender in the transaction. I think that not a lot of questions come up from first time home buyers until they actually see it on the closing disclosure, right? And it's not, or let me I guess back up a little bit, or the truth in lending statement that you provide them, right? And they're like, okay, I knew I was going to pay, this appraisal fee. I knew I was going to pay this, credit report application. I knew that I was going to pay for my attorney, but I didn't know that I was going to pay for title insurance. And what is that? And then that's when the question usually arises for first time homebuyers. So I actually think typically it's not something they're aware of until they start the home buying transaction.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, when I talk to a first-time homebuyer, the first thing they ask me is, what is that number, right? They look at the lender fees, they look at the attorney
Correct.
fees,
Yes.
and then they see the big title fees, and they say, well, I don't even know what that is.
Mm.
So, I find myself, speaking a little bit about that, but it's always nice to hear from a true professional the actual definitions and terminology and what's to know about title insurance.
Yeah, I mean, it ultimately is, and I think that you simplify the complicated in that respect, right? There's dozens of things that it would protect the client and the lender ultimately from, but I think really the simple way that you answer that question for them is you're ensuring that you're the sole owner of your property uh, from the date that you take ownership. Because when we go back on a purchase, we go back and we search 60 years of history on the property.
That's fantastic. Why 60? Is there a specific reason for that number? Is that just a standard number?
It's a great question. I mean, I don't know that.
Why do I ask for 2 years tax returns? That's just the number.
I guess that's probably just the standard protocol that is part of the purchase.
Why is title insurance cheaper on a refinance transaction than it is for a purchase?
Because you're only insuring the gap. So when you purchase a property, you're insuring the entire purchase price of the property, and then when you refi, you're only in there. It's called a reissue rate. So it's not nearly as expensive as the purchase rate, because the purchase of the home would have been $500,000. So you're paying a premium based on that, and now you only owe $400,000. Let me take that back. Now you only owe $300,000, but let's say you're cashing out for $400,000, so you're only paying the gap between the two.
Between what the original purchase price was, or between what the
No, between the existing loan amount and the new loan amount.
So if you're just doing a rate and term refinance,
it's there's just a reissue rate for what that is too.
I feel like I know I've explained this before, but I don't know if I've explained it that well. So thank you for that. We are this is a short show. We don't have a whole lot to go into, except I would love to hear, do you have a crazy story? What is your craziest title story? And then we're going to leave with a parting piece of pie.
Oh my goodness, the craziest title story. That's a great question.
Too crazy to remember?
I mean, I think that there's so many, and I think that we've run into transactions that there was so many issues with the property that we couldn't even close, right? Because we couldn't ensure that the title was clean, and the current owner had to go back and resolve years of issues of inheritances and things like that. We've done properties where it shows up in mortgages and the mortgage companies are now out of business, and we have to go back and find discharges of mortgages in order to make sure that title insurance cleans. So I don't think that there's one specifically that stands out to me, but probably more multiple, little ones that you're like, and just when you think that you've heard them all, you haven't.
I feel like that's the real estate industry in a whole.
I don't think that there's any doubt that there's never been two real estate transactions that I've ever done that have been the same. And I've been doing this for 16 years and have closed, with my company, tens of thousands of deals. There's just when you think you know it, you don't. And I'm sure you feel the same way, right? Like,
I think that's a lesson in life. When you think you know something, so here comes the curveball.
So I think that's a great point. I think that's ultimately a life lesson, right? It's not necessarily, it's you constantly have to be evolving and to question, what's in front of you, and be okay saying to people, hey, listen, we need a minute to figure this out, right? Because I think that if you don't say that, then that's where you can run into problems for your clients, right? If you just kind of like want to omit stuff. But I think that that's not knowing the answer sometimes, but finding the right answer. And it happens all the time at RMS. We hit the pause button. We reach out to multiple powers that be, consult lots of different people, maybe one, have a little meeting in the minds in our office, and we figure it out, right? Because that's ultimately, our responsibility in the transaction.
I love it. Well, this is the end of the show, and this is really where we leave with one of my favorite parts, and we call this a parting piece of pie. Now, pie is an acronym. I'm an acronym freak, which is where we're going to ask you something profound, something inspiring, or something entertaining. So you're going to tell us something profound, although I think you already did, something inspiring, and something entertaining. Or one or the other.
Entertaining.
I mean, it could be funny. Give me a joke. Give me something.
Entertaining and inspiring. So, I don't know, circa, when was I in college? 1993, 94. I'm at I don't go to University of Delaware, but I'm at the University of Delaware seeing Bryan Adams in concert. He somehow switches stages. He's singing I'm Only Happy When He's Dancing. I run up to the stage and they pull me on stage, and everybody's dancing with someone else. And here I am singing in the microphone. She's only happy when she's dancing. 1 inch from Bryan Adams. So that's a pretty interesting story, and one that, when you're telling people two truths and a lie, that's one that probably people probably think is a lie, but that's a complete fact. Something inspiring, I think, for me in 20, as 2023 approaches, COVID's a little bit behind us. I'm going to be 50 this year. I think as I kind of, you know, breach that half century mark, I think one of the most important things to me this year is embracing that age is just a number, and that as much as my work and my family are by far my whys, um, financial freedom is the way to make my why even more important. And I think that that is my number one focus in 2023 is how do I achieve that for myself and my family.
That was fantastic. I love it. And it explains why you're so comfortable in front of this microphone. I am no Brian Adams, but I do appreciate you being here with us today. You have been watching The Advisor's Advantage with James Murphy and the lovely Jennifer Cunningham with RMS, giving us some wonderful insight about title insurance, excuse me, and providing us that advantage, the advantage that we all need for the experience that we want. We'll see you on the next show. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, everybody else.